Franchises went crazy for Zion Williamson before the 2019 draft, but it was nowhere close to the hype built around a young LeBron James. We thought we'd never see that much hype for any youngster ever again. If there's ever going to be anyone with that much hype, it would be Victor Wembanyama. We've run out of words to describe the unicorn, but here's what Michael Douglas, yes, the actor, has to say, and more about the tank race. Starting with Michael Douglas's dream scenario. Everyone would love to have Victor Wembanyama on their side, and that includes fans from all franchises in the NBA. And it doesn't matter if you're just a random fan or some celebrity. Everyone's seen the show that Wembanyama put on in the US, and what he's been up to since. The Frenchman is assured for the first overall pick of the 2023 NBA draft, barring any injuries. And even actor Michael Douglas couldn't help but comment on a potential landing spot for the talented youngster. Douglas was on hand to watch the Bologna-Levallois Metropolitans, the team currently lucky enough to have Wembanyama, and the actor couldn't help but marvel at his quality. In fact, he went as far as saying that he would love to see the Miami Heat land the sought-after superstar. When asked the question, Douglas revealed how he's already been in Victor's ear and told him that he should go to Florida. Looks like the actor is on a first-name basis with the superstar and wants to do his bit in helping him on his way to the Heat. But they might not have a chance, considering they're not candidates for tanking and there's a proper race. But Douglas still wants him to end up in Miami, and he explained how lots of teams will be tanking this year. He went on to say how at least 4 or 5 teams will be vying to get their hands on Wembanyama, and he's not wrong. Adding to that, more from Douglas on Wembanyama. The two-time Academy Award winner added how he's a big basketball fan and knows that Wembanyama will definitely be a #1 draft choice in the upcoming draft. But it's not just Wembanyama's impressive displays on the court that have caught the actor's eye. Douglas pointed out how the Wembanyamas are a nice family, and Victor has a very talented brother too. Not to mention, he also had to say a couple of things about Victor's gameplay, noticing that he moves beautifully and is impressive. That's quite high praise, and we are very impressed with Douglas's eye. No doubt every single scout in the NBA knows just how special the French teenager is going to be. Douglas wished him the best, and we've got no doubt that he's got his fingers crossed and hopes that the Heat end up tanking one way or another so that they can get their hands on Victor. But could it be a realistic goal for the Heat to land the sensation? Now do they have a realistic shot? Well, as much as we'd want Douglas to get his wish, purely because we love him for his role in Basic Instinct, and not because we have a soft spot for Miami, the fact is, it doesn't seem very likely. The Heat weren't busy in the offseason and wanted to give this season another shot with the same team. On paper, it was a good idea, but the problem is, injuries have caused them to fall back, and they haven't been able to gather any kind of momentum this season. A 13-15 record isn't exactly ideal for a team like the Heat, which had very high hopes before the season began. They'd love to make it right, and with more than half a season remaining, Miami will turn it around. There's too much talent on that roster for them to not do so, and if they do that, they can make the playoffs, which effectively means they won't be going for Wembanyama. It's a shame, but given the quality of their roster, they would never want to tank, at least not on purpose. And yes, that was supposed to sound like Lloyd Christmas saying, "So you're telling me there's a chance?" The faintest of chances, but there is one, and it might not be the most ideal situation. Let's talk about how Heat could land Wembanyama. Well, they have struggled quite a bit with injuries this season, and Jimmy Butler certainly isn't getting any younger. A few more losses and a couple of injuries at the right time could genuinely turn the Heat into tanking contenders. They currently find themselves 10th in the Eastern Conference, and a few losses could easily turn their season into a really poor one. And maybe it could be for the best too. Yes, they've got some fantastic players, but there are also some aging superstars. And what better way to get back into contention than to rebuild? And it doesn't even need to be rebuilt properly. Just get rid of the dead weight, and they would be stuck well below the playoff spots by the time the trade deadline closes. Do that, and who knows what could happen from that point onwards. It would be a little bit boneheaded, we're not going to lie, but in today's era of breaking it all up and starting from scratch, it wouldn't be the worst of ideas. And for someone like Wembanyama, you might have to take a foolish step, because if it pays off, winning a championship would be the least you get in return. It would probably provide the Heat a chance to build a legacy for years to come, and that's definitely worth it, isn't it? But it's a tough decision to make. Will they listen to Douglas and find a way of landing Wembanyama? Now, let's take a look at the ugly tank race. Losing on purpose is never a good idea. There's no respect for doing that. But if you've seen Wembanyama in action, you can't help but understand why teams might end up doing so. Steph Curry explained how if you create a player in NBA 2K, you'd get someone similar to Victor Wembanyama. He's the perfect player, and that's why most teams aren't thinking twice before losing and getting rid of any decent now players to lose games and get to the bottom and try and win the lottery. Wembanyama is truly a league-altering talent. It's not a joke anymore. He really is changing the league in many ways, and he'll continue to do it before he's even made it to the NBA. As per projections, Wembanyama will add more than $500 million to the value of the franchise that gets lucky, and there's no doubt that he'll also bring wins to that team. He's the reason the NBA season is looking very different from the ones we've seen before. He's the reason the NBA is a little ugly, because teams aren't afraid to lose games. And most executives saw it coming. Hell, they were the ones who made it happen. The Spurs traded their best player, DeJounte Murray, at 26, a time when he was just about to enter his peak. The Jazz also traded their biggest two stars, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. And while their season has still gone in the opposite direction, for some reason, other franchises also followed the template. Moving on, the tank race is truly unwatchable. Now, in the long term, it might be a fantastic idea and the right thing to do, but in the short term, it means that teams end up playing some horrid basketball. It's certainly not what we want to see as lovers of the game, but that's exactly what the NBA incentivizes. And maybe that's where we need to bring a change, because it really can't go on like this. You see a lot of ugly gameplay in March and April, the end of the regular season, with teams shooting for the bottom of the standings by trading their stars away, but this season it may begin even sooner, simply because the three worst teams in the league will each have a 14% chance of landing the first pick, and therefore Wembanyama. The other two could get their hands on tantalizing prospects like Amen Thompson and Scoot Henderson. Not too shabby, eh? And while we commend the long-term planning, it just feels a little unethical. And while it might help test Michael Douglas's wish, because if Miami isn't in and around the playoff spots, they might as well think about giving this tanking thing a shot. But we just don't feel that this should be the way of deciding it. The lottery, of course, used to be even more tilted towards the bottom, and it wasn't until the odds were flattened in 2019 that it somewhat changed. But now it means that the teams with the 4th, 5th, and 6 worst records also have a very decent chance of landing Wembanyama. Lastly, the NBA needs to find a better way. Now, with other teams also having a great chance of landing Wembanyama, means that the tank race could easily be a lot worse this season. This, in turn, means that the NBA has incentivized more teams to tank, and that clearly shows that the new structure isn't working and has the opposite effect to what was initially intended. Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, pointed out how they'll be paying particular attention to the problem of tanking. But let's be honest, words definitely won't cut it, and it hardly feels like a warning considering the NBA has been streaming all of Wembanyama's games in the French league this season. But if the league-altering Wembanyama continues on this upward trajectory, there would be a proper bloodbath. Some truly horrible basketball will be on display, and that's where the NBA needs to work out this structure and bring a new one in place. Maybe they could test a demotion policy. The worst team gets the highest pick, but also bears the financial loss of having to play in the G League, or maybe reduce the number of games in the regular season and instead host a tournament similar to the playoffs between the non-playoff teams to compete for the draft position. That's a wrap for this video. Where do you think Victor Wembanyama will end up? And do you agree that the tanking race makes the NBA unwatchable? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.